Good evening, everyone. So this will be the Dhamma discussion, how to apply Buddhism in your daily life. And before we start this, I should give you a little bit of an introduction of what this organization is. Waterloo Wellington Buddhist Monastery and Meditation Center. So this Waterloo Wellington Monastery is located in Cambridge, a township called North Dumfries in Ontario. And it's actually a beautiful story that this location, the physical location, which is about a 80-acre wetland area where the monastery is situated, overseeing that beautiful picturesque view, is actually a house which was built by a lady called Bernice Beale, who was also known as the Turtle Lady at the time, Turtle Lady of North Dumfries. And why Turtle Lady is because she has dedicated her life to conserve the fauna and flora, especially the turtles, the snapping turtles, who are apparently this Berries Lake, which is right next to us in front of me, is supposed to be a virgin wetland, whereas it's never been touched since the glacier times. It's been there. So you find a lot of fauna and flora endemic to this ecosystem, as well as you find a lot of migratory birds and beavers, coyotes, and all sorts of wildlife. So like this lady has provided a safe haven for all these animals who are seeking refuge, because around this area there's farmlands, and these poor animals would end up here because there's no one to hurt them, because it's a proper conserved area. So like the animals seek refuge in this safe haven, now that we have a Buddhist monastery here, it is also a safe haven for troubled souls all over the world, all over the country, from anywhere in the world. Having said that, I will also give you a bit of an introduction of who I am. So my name is Kalaboila Ananda. I have been a Buddhist monk for the last 4 years, a little more than 4 years. And I was not a monk from my childhood. I became a monk when I was 35 years of age. So I've been spent bulk of my life as a lay person, which is advantageous because in order to speak to a forum, I think I could use my lay experience so that I could relate to your issues more, as well as try to understand you better, because I have been playing quite a few roles a normal lay person would play. So it also sort of reflects my view on what Buddhism is and how I took it. So to start with, I think when I adopted Buddhism, I wasn't really looking after the faith component of it. I was from the very beginning leaning towards being agnostic. Now, what is agnosticism? It's a later on we will figure out what agnosticism or being agnostic is mainly. But I found more and more I learned Buddhism, more and more I read Buddhism and understood Buddhism, that original Buddhist idea stems from being agnostic. Agnostic is basically, in a very crude way of saying what agnosticism is, that you do not believe in things. It's sort of a common, very crude interpretation would be a non-believer. Well, when you say non-believer, it wasn't really the case, because in order to believe something, you need to really know that for sure, understand it for sure. So in my case, I did not want to understand a faith per se, because I didn't understand that, because there was no rationale behind it. As well as I found that it really deserves some more attention, that you need to do some more research before you properly understand a faith. So because of that, I started as an agnostic Buddhist, although my family was a Buddhist background, and I was always a thrill seeker. So being a thrill seeker, I went and was not afraid to go and have fun the way I want. So I've been doing a lot of activities, hobbies, which includes a certain amount of risk factor, and I've been traveling a lot. I have also been an entrepreneur, but towards my latter part of my career, I have been a social entrepreneur. I started a couple of movements, been involved with social entrepreneurship in Sri Lanka, back in Sri Lanka. I was also an academic. So with all that, I would also like to turn your camera on if you feel comfortable, so that I don't feel like I'm discussing this alone with a computer. So let me tell you the objectives of this program. Now, as I mentioned, I originally was expecting a lot of non-Sri Lankan community participation, so I will keep it anyway for them. Maybe they can refer to it later on. So the program objective is to give an introduction to Buddhism in general, the culture of Buddhism and what is mainstream Buddhism. So although this is one of the program objectives, that this is not the main weight on this entire program, but it is just there because for someone who doesn't know Buddhism, I will give you a brief introduction, a very snapshot of what Buddhist culture is, what is mainstream Buddhism is. But then more importantly, I want to give you a hint to the core teaching of Buddhism. That would be the main focus or the main objective of this program, to give you a hint of what is the crux of Buddhism, what is Buddhism in a nutshell, what is the core philosophy of Buddhism. And probably you have already heard that there's an inherent issue of existence. We'll see what is the inherent issue of existence, and then there's a solution and a practice which is proposed. So we'll be looking into that. And I also want to say, when I say an inherent issue of existence, I'm not trying to create a problem for you. I'm not trying to come up with a problem and give you a solution. I'm just trying to only suggest you, or rather point out if there is a problem, that you could see if what I'm saying is true or not. So it's not going to be based on faith. It's not going to be a sermon type of a thing. It's more of, going to be more of an eye-opening kind of a thing. And to give you another quick example for this is that back in the day, now there's a war right now in Ukraine and Russia, and back in the day in Serbia, where a lot of coal and gas mines sit right now, people have been dying, been freezing to death without energy. They did not have the warmth, but so they were dying in front of all these coal and natural gas reserves. So back in the day, they did not have the technology to mine that, to excavate that, to refine that, and make use and make energy out of it. Like right now, we have our furnaces, which is fueled by propane. They did not have that technology back in the day. So similarly, a lot of people in the world, they have the resources needed to find this ultimate solace, ultimate peace, ultimate liberation of your own mind. However, you might still not possess the technology of how to do it. Now, I took the example of people freezing to death few centuries ago on top of coal mines in cold Siberia. But at least they knew that they were cold and they needed warmth to be heated. So they probably used firewood or something like that to burn. But in our case, in most of the cases, that if I take that same anecdote, we don't know what is suffering itself. We know the side effects of that. We know the heartaches, we know the physical pain of it, but we don't know what really suffering is, which is a key word in Buddhism, which I mentioned as the inherent issue of existence. So that will be another component where I will be covering. So the program objectives again, the culture in general and the core doctrine, and then thirdly, I would also want to spend a lot of time, although it's only 5 days, I would also want to spend a lot of time on practical ways to find calmness if you already have a troubled mind. And that I'll be teaching you a couple of techniques on what to do and how to do. And the fourth one, last not but least, is a journey beyond solace. Now, it's nice to have solace, but what is beyond that? In fact, Buddhism, this is sort of the intro to Buddhism. And the real Buddhism, the path of a real seeker, starts after the fourth point. So I do not know if we have the time to spend a lot of time on that within 5 days. Now, why I said that is that these days everything is quite fast paced, and we tend to do things instantly. Now there's instant food, there's instant noodles. So we want to adhere to an instant version of Buddhism. Unfortunately, what I have experienced with instant things, now back in the day we had an extruded puffy snack called tipi tip back in Sri Lanka. it's very nice, very tasty. However, you cannot fulfill your hunger with eating that puffy extruded snack, or you say cotton candy. You can't really be full by eating cotton candy. It's instant, but it's not good on the long run. It's not giving you that yield in the long run. So like instant noodles. So the real Buddhism is not an instantaneous activity. It's not a fast food. What you need to do there is you need to first go to the land, prep the land, do the sowing of the seed, fertilize it, irrigate it, look after the crop, and then harvest it. So it's a very long process. So the real Buddhism is not an instant activity. It takes time, it takes commitment. However, having said that, this program will be an introduction to what all that is. But like I said initially, I'm going to touch upon the core teachings of Buddhism very briefly, and then more importantly, I'm going to suggest to you a few practical ways on how to find calmness and solace. And the fourth thing, the few days that we have planned ahead. So we have the nature of happiness on the first day, and the second day would be desire and satisfaction. I will go into detail what each means. Disappointment and uncertainty, anger, fear, and the third day is 3 marks of existence. Now that is a particular Buddhist term, 3 marks of existence. Now how these 5 days are organized is that the first couple of days I'll be talking about an inherent issue of existence. We'll get to know what it is that we'll be talking about. And then on the next 2 days, we are looking at the therapeutic solace. And the 5th day, final day, we'll be looking at the philosophical Buddhism. I'll explain you one by one what each of these things mean. And then we'll also be discussing a little bit of trivia for the people who are not familiar with the Buddhist culture. So that would be our program lineup. And the next question is, who should be really listening to this program? For whom is this program? Now, this program, the people who are right here on this forum, or people who would later on see this on YouTube, now they might click on this link because simply they are inquisitive. What is this whole Waterloo Wellington Buddhist Monastery doing? What is this monk going to talk about? Maybe there's some form of an interest. Actually, I am asking you the question. Why are you right now in front of me on the screen, or later on YouTube? Why are you in front of this? What is the true reason that you are in front of the screen right now? It's a question that I'm asking you. I'm asking a rhetorical question, but just while I'm talking, think about it. Why are you really listening why are you sitting in front of this computer? So there could be many reasons. Like I said, it could be you're just interested for some reason, or inquisitive, or maybe your Google or YouTube algorithm popped up this link, so you are randomly listening to this. Or maybe you are just bored, you didn't have anything to do, so you wanted to see how to apply Buddhism in your daily life. Or maybe you were heartbroken, you were sad, you had something that you want to get over with, and because of that reason you are trying to see if this is a workable solution. It could also be that you are forced to come here. I know that a lot of second generation kids whose parents are Sri Lankan and Buddhist, the parents would force their kids to watch this. So there are people who would sit in front of this also. So I'll be asking you a lot of questions, rhetorical, but the point is that it's an opportunity for you to figure out yourself. Right. So now I asked I asked the question, or rather I made the statement for whom this program should be. I will not tell it up front. I will let you decide who should really join this program. But before that, I would ask you another question. Why do we need a religion? Why do we need a religion? So that question is a question that we need to really ask ourselves. When you say religion, sometimes this very interesting idea of self-actualization pops up. So most of you probably have heard the Maslows Pyramid of hierarchy. The things a person should have, and once he fulfill one part, he would move on to the next. For example, you find in the bottom, what is it? A lot of people say, what is the most needed thing these days? They would say Wi-Fi. But as per Maslow's, it's not Wi-Fi, it's your physiological needs, your food, water, etc. So once your food, water, etc. is satisfied, you would move into the next one, safety, love or belonging, esteem, your place or the social strata that you have. And then comes the self-actualization. So self-actualization is actually a few questions that you ask yourself. Am I content with this life? What is this whole life about? What is going to be after death? What was before death? What's the meaning? What's the purpose of this life? Am I truly satisfied? So you'll be bombarded with a certain set of self-actualization questions. But mind you, it would only happen if your basic needs are fulfilled. And this pyramid is not based on your chronological age or something. It's based on your need age or your fulfillment age. Someone who's very young could have a self-actualization question, or someone who's very old chronologically might still be stuck in safety, love and belonging, or esteem, or wherever. Now, having said that, let me bring out a little bit of trivia also. Like the pyramids, in Sri Lanka, you have this thing called the stupas. Now, stupa is a nice structure, quite big as well. You find 400 feet, 300 feet huge stupas in Sri Lanka. In Myanmar, in Cambodia, in Thailand, you find a lot. They have different shapes and sizes based on the country. So a stupa is basically where you leave the relics of previous monks or relics of the time, and then you build a stupa. But why I want to bring out this stupa is that I wanted to equate this stupa to the need of a religion. Now, this stupa has a few areas. The base of it, the middle part where the relics are deposited, and then two other parts. And then you find the jewel or the jade crystal up on the top, which is quite big and quite expensive. And all these stupas were built 1000 years, 1500 years. So there have been stupas even built right after, during the time of Buddha, 2500 years ago. So when we look at why we need a religion, for a lot of people, they find religion for cultural reasons. Now, why is it so important for us to have a religion culturally? If you look at how religions were formed in the beginning, that you would find certain religions were quite useful if you are a nomad or if you are a trader, because having that cultural identity let you trade easily, let you belong to the same community, so you could do your trading easily. Now, back in the day, it being primarily a barter-based trading system, where some people stayed and cultivated, where the others moved around, especially in Eurasia. So that has been in the Silk Route of Asia and Europe. So culturally, people need a religion, and some people, because you inherit it from your parents, you culturally get engaged in your religion. So this cultural component is huge. Even within Buddhism, you would find that there's so many variations of Buddhism culturally. But then comes the second part, which is the therapeutic part. Now, the therapeutic part is not necessarily cultural, and it can be used by anyone. For example, right now, there might be Christians, there might be Muslims who are listening to this, trying to find a therapeutic solace using Buddhism. So it actually doesn't limit to Buddhism or Buddhists per se. Anyone can use it, and even Buddhists themselves use this therapeutic part to a great extent. Sometimes the cultural rituals can be therapeutic itself. I have seen it back in the day, back in Sri Lanka, that how people do engage in the rituals and how they find their therapeutic release. I even have found that people who are very desperate, who are about to kill themselves, come to the temple, we do a chanting, and they recover, and they are fine with it. So there's a great therapeutic element to this. And then, more importantly, up you go, you find the philosophical component of Buddhism. Now, this philosophical part does not mean that it's about theorizing things like you read a book and then you use it to chat over coffee This is not armchair philosophy. Now the philosophy here means that it is neither cultural nor therapeutic, but a practical thing that you can use, which is a little more advanced than those two. Now they say philosophy is questions without answers. Or in philosophy, you never find a single answer. You find two schools of thought always arguing against that. Is the world deterministic, or do we have free will? Is there a beginning to the world, or is it a non-beginning, non-end kind of a thing? Was there a big bang, or was there a creation? So philosophy is always about questions. And they say that religion is an answer where you cannot question. Whereas philosophy is questions where you don't have answers. Religion is an answer where you can't have questions. You cannot question religion. But mind you, Buddhism actually does not fall into those two. It is not a mere armchair philosophy where there's only unanswered questions which are bothering for 1,000 years. Neither it's a religion where you need to believe in everything by faith, or you cannot question. You can always question. In fact, this is all about trying to find yourself, trying to find your question and your answer. Hence comes the final part, the epitome of it, the crown, the jewel on the top, the liberation or the self-actualization. Now I put self-actualization there. However, self-actualization can also be meant for a person who's getting more involved with a religion, therapeutically or culturally. Now that can mean that as well. But in our case, I take the self-actualization all the way up there. So it's about liberation, and this is how I see the need of a religion for most of the people. Now I just pointed this out. I laid out a platform or a framework. It's up to you to figure out where do you belong. None of these things are good or bad inherently, but the original idea of Buddhism wasn't to make it a religion to use it only for rituals, neither for therapeutic reasons. Now I'll also explain what is therapeutic and what is liberation, what's the difference between those two. As I see that there's a marked difference between those two. You give a solace to someone, you give a temporary solace to someone, he gets healed, he or she gets healed, and then he sorts of get into the same trouble again, and then you have to repeat it all over again. Maybe slightly a different technique, but more or less the same technique. But enlightenment or liberation is not a temporary solace, it's an ultimate solution. But we do not want to talk about things that we haven't experienced. So I want to focus this discussion on things that we are experiencing. So it is not magic, it's not a divine message of any sort. It is not something that you have never seen. It has to be something that you know throughout. What I am doing is I am just pointing it out. So that is my only task here. Sometimes Buddha was referred to be a mirror. Now what does a mirror do? Mirror shows you who you are. It doesn't show you an artificial picture. It doesn't show you an elusive picture like a television, but it shows who's right in front of the mirror. So it shows who you are. So I want to do the same thing through this course. How do we find ourselves? Now we were talking about liberation and self-actualization in that manner. Not self-actualization in a general manner, but self-actualization in a liberative manner. Now there would be a few prerequisites for that. Why prerequisites is that I'll show you another interesting image as well. When I was traveling in Asia, I went to this beautiful country called the Philippines, and they have these amazing lakes where it's crystal clear, Palawan Island. So you could see all the way down to the bottom in this crystal clear water. And I'm taking this as a metaphor, as an anecdote, to show you that our mind is also like this. It's like this water body sometimes. Now in the bottom of this is the core of who I am. My name is Ananda. So the Ananda's core is deep down under this water body. If this water body is murky, I cannot see all the way down. And if this is agitated, where there's bubbles and there's agitated currents all over, then also I cannot see all the way down. But if it's crystal clear, where it's not murky, it's crystal clear, and if the water is not does not have currents or agitations or bubbles popping up, that is also clear. So I can then also see what is in the core of me clearly. So similarly, my metaphor is that our mind is also cluttered with things. What are we cluttered with is that we are cluttered with beliefs and prejudices. Beliefs. A belief, I'm equating it to the murkiness of the water. If you believe in a lot of things, if your mind is already preconceived, you would not see a lot about outside world as well as inside world. So that's why I said Buddhism stems from an agnostic point of view. You are not latching onto a belief system, but you're trying to look into yourself and trying to identify what is my belief rather. And the second part is, if your mind is a very compulsive mind, agitated mind, now then also you won't be able to find self-actualization or liberation in this sense. Now, the simplest example that I can take is that we have a kettle here, and that kettle, when you put water and when you turn it on, it's transparent, so you can see the bubbles coming up. So I find that mind is also sometimes like that. When the mind is agitated, there's a lot of bubbles and currents there. You cannot see anything clearly. So you need to calm them down. If there's murkiness in your inside mind, you need to make it crystal clear, so then you will be finding what is inside. So in order to do that, first you need to find what is a non-compulsive mind. How do you find a non-compulsive mind? Also you need to find an open mind, a mind which is not bound by beliefs and preconceptions or prejudices. How do you do that? I will teach you what to do. We will have to find this tool called the mindfulness or a mindful mind. And also you will have to find a critical mind. What is a critical mind? You do not agree with everything I say, you question me. In fact, you question yourself, you question your own beliefs. So now you probably see that why Buddhism is not a conventional religion. It is different in quite a few ways to most of the conventional religions, where there's liberation within the doctrine, where you can question the person who's doing the sermon. In fact, I do not want to do a sermon which is a condescending one-way stream. I want to have a discussion with you, and that discussion, the objective of this discussion, as I said, is to find who you are really. Okay, so those are our prerequisites to have this discussion, and I'll be taking an approach of a very I won't be using a lot of hardcore Buddhist lingo or Buddhist terminology. I'll be using layman's terms, because often I find, I was watching something the other day. I was interested in watching a clip on how to play mahjong, right? And the guy who was teaching it was using so many Cantonese words. So it was like so uncomprehendable. So then I figured that using a lot of Buddhist terminology is not going to do any good for you. We need to speak in a language that everyone understands. So right now I'm using English. Let's stick to the English language. Let's stick to examples that we see daily in our practical lives, not to the examples that were valid 2500 years ago. So we will be having a very basic, simple layman's term approach in this. I will also bring out not only Buddhist references, but I'll bring out references from all the other religions and philosophies that we find, and I will focus, like I said, on the therapeutic and the practical aspect of it. And throughout this, it will be about, I want you to find yourself, or find self-awareness for that matter. This is also not going to be an ultra spiritual version or a fully academic version of Buddhism. It is a dialed down version of Buddhism for Dummies. Now you find this subject for Dummies series. Now I said the Buddhism for Dummies, that is not to anyway derogate, it's not meant in a derogatory manner, but I will also tell what I really meant by Buddhism for Dummies, right? There's a certain ignorance that we live in. and that's why I called it being dummy. But we'll try to figure out what that ignorance is. And as you might think, that ignorance has nothing to do with if you have a PhD or if you are very learned, if you are a someone who has a lot of certificates under your belt. That is not the type of dumminess or ignorance I'm going to talk about here. And also, usually these courses start with who Buddha is. There was a princess back in the day, 2500 years ago, and then he did this, that, this was his life, and this was his father's life. I'm not going to do that here. I'll do it later. But what I'm rather focusing on here is what was Buddha really trying to convey. They say that the Buddha we had wasn't the only Buddha. There have been so many Buddhas for so many eons, and they spoke the same thing, they gave the same message. So let's start with that message rather than looking at a personification of Buddha. Without trying to look at the personal life of Buddha, let's focus on the message first. And like I said, this is all your own observations of life, not me telling you what my point of view or my idea of what Buddhism is. I want this to be a relatable self-observation of your life. Okay, right. Now, having said that, that will be the preamble for our discussion. I wanted to ask you a simple question. Now is probably the time for you to turn on your mics and answer some questions. Okay, so let me ask the question first. Why do we live? Now that's a self-actualization question. Very simple question. Might come out as very simple, but the answer is very complicated. Probably you have thought of this or you haven't. But can any good lady or gentleman or a person can answer me, why do we live? What is the reason for our existence? What do you think? Why do we live? Any reason? If you're finding it hard to understand why we live, I'll try to break it down for you. I will ask a follow-up question. What is life? What is life really? So these will be self-actualization questions. Why do we live? We didn't know the answer, straightforward answer. So now we are asking, what is life? If that question is also too hard, let me even dial it down. So I said this is Buddhism for dummies, right? What does a living have and the dead doesn't? What does the living have and the dead do not? So the answer to that question is that we actually don't know how the dead would think or contemplate, because no one is telling us. But we know a dead person wouldn't respond to us. Now, when I was a kid, I had this very bad habit. Whenever I go to funeral houses, I would poke the body of the remains, and that's a very bad habit. And my mom used to scold me all the time. I actually wanted to see if they would respond. I know that the other people, the normal living people, would respond. So I was trying to see if they would respond also. Then I figured that they never respond. They never did. And again, like I told, we never know what dead are thinking or dead are feeling, but we know, at least anatomically, at least physiologically, medically, that the dead cannot hear, they cannot see, they cannot perceive, taste, smell, or bodily sensations, and their heart doesn't beat. They are absent of life, at least what we can visibly see. So they basically are deprived of the five senses, and then the sixth activity, which is thinking, or which is the mind. At least that's what we think of dead people. We don't know exactly. Maybe I'll be able to answer when I am dead. Right now, this is what I think. So the dead don't have these, but the living, they have these. When I poke a living person, they respond, and they can smell things, they can hear things, they can use their five perceptions, the five sensory organs, and they could also think about things. They can think about the past, they can think of contemplate of future, they can respond to the present, stimulus. So they have a mind activity as well. So the five senses, the experiences, and then they have a mind activity. And if you ask again, what does a living person really engage his life with, I could tell four things, or categorically put into four baskets. Live people, or people who are living, they deal with people, they deal with places, they have pastimes, and they have their possessions, their materialistic possessions. So now we have a bit of an understanding of what life is. Life is about having experiences through our five senses, and we also think in that process. We also interact with the four categorical items. So now again, why do we live? Again, if it's a little clear now, can someone answer, why do we live now, if it's clear? If it's not clear, we'll go even to more questions, but if someone is clear about your existence, can you tell me, why do we live? What would be the answer for that? Would anyone like to enlighten me on your existence? Why do we live? Simple question.
That's the thought. So I will answer right. I just want to say maybe to be happy, to the end goal to be happy and to be at peace. I mean,
like that. Very good, very good, very good.
That kind of thing. And to be of service.
Be of service. Okay, very good. Is there any other reason why you live? Now, I'm not asking a generic question. I'm asking you a personal question. It is personal. Why do you live? Not a generic textbook answer. Why do you live? Is there any other answer?
Well, I have duties to perform as a mom.
Very good, very good,
sure.
Very good.
And I have family and friends who, I feel that I could be of service.
Right.
And I'm happy doing that.
You're happy doing that.
To make the best of it.
Very good, very good, very good, very good, very good. In fact, a lot of people in a forum like this, you are a little tensed up, you don't want to answer in this type of a forum, but in most of the friendly chats, when I ask this question, they say, I'm just living because I was born. There's no particular reason. I'm just born, hence I'm living, right? That's the most simple answer that you could give. So probably some of you would also think like that, there's no particular reason, I was born and hence I'm living. And then I ask them the next question. If you are living just because you are born, are you ready to live your life right now? I asked them that question. So they say, well, why not? They say that sometimes. And then I say, well, this is a vial of poison. It's poisonous. If you drink this, or if you consume this, you are going to die right away. Are you ready to take this right now? So when I say it in a hypothetical sense, they don't act very much. But if I'm being serious about it, if this is really poison, and if I'm giving this to you, are you ready to take this and die right now? That is, if you were living because you were just born and there's no particular reason for your existence. Now again, think about it. Ask that question yourself. If your answer for living is just because I was born, are you ready to take my poison pill and die right now? For most of the people, they would say, yes, sometimes, but I don't accept it, because when it comes to the real deal, they wouldn't do that. I mean, the thing I say is that if you are ready to die right now, before dying, why don't you become a monk first? And now a lot of people don't want to even do that. And when you don't want to even become a monk and stay in a boring monastery like this, I don't think you are ready to die. So some people will say, well, no, because dying is actually not a good thing to do. It's a sin. According to most religions, it's a bad thing to do. Committing suicide for no reason, when a monk says that I have a pill and consume it, it's a sin. So culturally you are prohibited. It's culturally wrong. And it's actually not culturally, it's legally wrong. It's not as per our, we are legally not allowed to die like that unless you have the euthanasia registered. I don't think Canadians have euthanasia. So we are not supposed to do it. A lot of people would say, like our previous answer, that we have responsibilities, we have civic duties, we cannot just die like that, we have these duties. And further you go, you will find that you have a lot of unfinished business. Imagine it's 7:42 p.m. right now. If this is your last moment, can you just turn it off like that? Or do you have to still attend to a few things that you need to do before you die? And if I am the decider of your death, how long would you ask me? Can I give you 5 minutes? Can I give you a month, an year, 20 years? How long would you need to finish your business? And often you would find, regardless of the time, no matter how much time I give, you will always have unfinished business, right? You probably cannot leave your loved ones, and you have duties to fulfill. And even at your last deathbed, you will still have a lot of unfinished business. So it's a very nice term which is used that I see in funerals whenever someone is dead. Rest in peace. RIP. Now, I'm always wondering, if our lives have so many unfinished business, how can someone rest in peace? Because you cannot be peaceful, because just before you were dying, you had a lot of things to be attended to. There's mortgage, there's loans, there's education, there's a trip, there's, I don't need to tell you, there's so many. Even an unsent email, unsent WhatsApp message, right? There's so many things. So I'm asking the question again, can you, at 7:43 p.m., can you turn it off and really rest in peace right now? So that is another question to think about. Still, I think probably you are not sure of why are you living. So I will ask another follow-up question. Okay, you probably don't know the answer to why we are living, but what do you think about why do we want to die? Why do people die? Now, I come across a lot of people who want to die, right? And most common answers are that most of the time it's relationship related, breakups, losses, loss of kith or kin. Sometimes it's financial distress, sometimes failure, shame. Shame is a big reason for people to die. Sometimes it's medical reasons. I find a lot of people that, especially I have met in various places, in India, for example, in a monastery, that there's a lot of people who wanted to end their lives because they were medically so unfit. And sometimes there's no apparent reason. You just want to die because your mood is in the wrong place. So I will share my presentation again and show you why would you want to die. Now that's going to be interesting. So why do we live or die? I find it that our mind could stay in two states. Either we can be sad or we can be happy. But that's only one dimension. We have another dimension. We can be hopeful or we can lose our hope. So our mind could be in these two dimensions, and we could belong into one of the four quadrants which this gives. Suppose that you are happy and hopeful, you would have absolutely no reason to die. You would in fact want to thrive, survive, stay for a very long time because you are hopeful and you are happy. You can be hopeful and sad. Now a lot of times, now take people in Ukraine, they are hopeful that eventually something is going to happen, NATO is going to come and they are going to help them out, but they're sad, but they don't want to kill themselves because they are hopeful. And sometimes you find this quadrant where you're sad and you're hopeless. You don't find that little bit of hope. And that's a area, it's a gray area, it's a dark area where people would want to go and think of ending their life. So you see that why people would want to die or why people would want to live. And then you find another quadrant. You're happy but you're hopeless. Now what type of a situation is that? You're happy at the same time you're hopeless. What does that mean? Anyway, we find this also in our lives, that sometimes when your sadness is there, however, if you're hopeful, you would not think of committing suicide or ending your life. But when there's sadness and there's no hope, you probably might think of something like that. And for your life, for you to live, you find that happiness and hope are two things which go very close by. I don't know if it's factually correct, but I recently read somewhere that there was this behavioral experiment where some mice were put onto put onto a sort of a container, water container, and because they couldn't get out, they were drowning. And the first time they were going to drown, and they gave up swimming after 5 minutes. Then what the scientists did was, just when they reached the 5 minutes, their exhaustion limit, they took them out of the water and put them again in the water. Now these mice went on for 15 minutes before they gave up. So I think hope is a critical factor for your life. It's that it keeps this momentum alive, it keeps the flame alive. Even if you are sad, because of the hope, you want to still go on. So we find that in conclusion, our life is about striving or hoping for happiness, something like that. So just see if it's true to you. If your life is also like that, is your life about, or the core driver of your life is hoping and striving for this happiness? Sometimes you enjoy the happiness, and then you strive, or you hope, or you long for that happiness to repeat again. Is that life for you? Maybe not, maybe yes, but now we need to find out an interesting question. What is happiness? Because I want to sort of define the periphery, or the term, or at least for us to discuss further. So what is happiness? Again, without looking at what happiness is directly, let's look at what is sadness. Like I mentioned earlier, sadness could occur because of loss of kith and kin. People are sad when their parents pass away, their children pass away. That's a primary cause. Loss of possessions. Your house got washed away. I think in Australia there's a flood right now. So when you lose your materialistic things, your possessions, you are sad. Not being able to travel because of COVID restrictions, not being able to go to the restaurant, not being able to chat with your friends, especially for school-going children and young adults, that's an issue. Physical pain, disease, illness cause you sadness. Unfulfilled wishes. You wished for something, but you could not fulfill that. That causes us sadness. So these things cause us sadness, and what causes happiness? Again, without directly giving an answer, I will let you think on these lines. There are certain ingredients for happiness. What are the ingredients? First of all, you need to be able to perceive things in life. When I say perceive things, first you need to have, you need to be able to see things, listen to things. You need your eye, ear, nose, tongue, and the body. You need your sight, sound, smell, taste, and your haptic. You need the touch sensation. You need these ingredients to be happy. Without these, it would make you less happy. If you don't know, if you don't believe me, I couldn't locate it in Canada, but I have seen it in a few other countries, that there are isolation pods. Isolation pods, another name for that is sensory deprivation pods. So what happens there is that you are in a pod which is filled with salt water. There's no sound, there's no light, there's no smell, there's no taste. Even your touch sensation is minimal because you're floating on salt water. So you don't feel the body weight. Only device which is left for you is your mind. And a lot of people, some people like that trip, some people don't. They complain that it's like a very bad void that I do not want to go. It's not a happy place for me, because we do not have that stimulus needed to happiness. Or rather the ingredients for happiness. And then in order to be happy, you also need to have a mind, because you are not particularly happy or sad when you are sleeping. When I say sleeping, not dreaming, in your deep sleep, not REM sleep, your proper deep sleep. So you need your mind, memories, feelings in order to be happy. And you also need the time. Whatever I mean by time, you need the past, present, and the future to exist in sync. For example, you look at me right now in your present, but if you did not know that I look like a man from your past, this would not make any sense. You cannot have that feeling of happiness or sadness if you did not have a information or a memory from your past. Also, if you do not think of a future, you will also not have this component of hope, because hope is always associated with the future. So hope and happiness has a lot to do with the past, future, and the present. So without that, there will be no happiness. So that is an ingredient. But I would limit this discussion to what I like to call as the 4 P's of happiness. Now in marketing you find the 4 P's: product, price, etc. So I also figured out that there's 4 P's for happiness. What are those? The 4 P's for happiness would be these. We can categorically put our experiences into what we possess, our materialistic possessions, and the people that we interact with, the places that we go to, places we call home, places we call interesting, places where we travel, places we want to avoid. Now all these things could be positive or negative. There are people that we want to avoid, there are people we want to hang out with, there are things that we do not want to have, there are things that we want to have. And then there's also pastime. Pastime means your activity, your habit. So the 4 P's of happiness is that possessions, people, places, and past. So what do you do with these 4 elements? You continuously interact with these things, and this interaction with these 4 P's gives you happiness. So it's very simple. It's not something that I discovered, something which that you don't know, or something that you need to believe. I'm just putting that in a framework and pointing out to you. So if someone does not agree with what I'm saying, please raise your hand and ask the question. I'm only pointing out things as it is. I'm not trying to push something into your mind, push a faith into your mind. I'm just showing you things as it is. So then there's this very interesting question. This happiness is whose happiness? Is it, I'll tell you a nice story. When I was married back in the day, before I became a monk, every Sunday usually we had to sort of sit down with the in-laws, or Saturdays or the weekends. Also I had this old habit of meeting my friends over the weekend. So then there came a point where I had to select on one. Either I had to sit down with the in-laws, or I had to go and have fun with my friends. And there was also the deciding factor, your wife. And then later on I was thinking, what made me happy the most? Usually I ended up with sitting with my in-laws. However, I knew that hanging out with my friends was happier. But then I was thinking, why did not I do that? Then I figured that actually I was being I was thinking of my wife's point of view, and I would want to do what makes her happy. So because of that, I went and had dinner with my in-laws. But then I was thinking, is it really because she wanted it, or is it because it was easier for me? Because if you don't go, you're going to listen to a lot of screaming and all that during the next week. So I do not want to listen to that, and not listening to that makes me happy. So actually, although I thought that it's someone else's happiness, it's my kids' happiness, it's my wife's, my partner's, my community's happiness, actually I'm thinking about my happiness. So in a way, it's really about me. I am the center of happiness. Now that is something to think of also. We say that we do things for the kids, for our family, for our towns, for our communities, for our country, for causes. But isn't it really about me wanting to do something? Right. So there's that of the happiness as well. And I was going to talk for about a little more time. So I will only take a little bit of time, and then I will finish what I wanted to say about happiness later. But in the meantime, you can ask me questions if you have any. I would also now show you a few characteristics of happiness. Now, what are the characteristics of happiness? I was talking about the ingredients needed, and then what are the characteristics of happiness? The first thing is that in order to be happy, you need something. You cannot simply be happy just out of a void, in a vacuum. when I say like in a deprivation pod or a isolation pod, out of a vacuum you cannot be happy. You need something to be happy. And in order to have that something, you need to either have resources. To get that something, you either need money, time, or energy. So some people naturally are very lucky in their lives. They find time, energy, and money on a silver plate. Some people are not so lucky. They need to really strive for that, and even after all this striving, they still do not find it. So some people become lucky and some people become unlucky in that. And if you look at our life cycle as humans, you will see this, that from our young ages until we are bedridden, or until a point where we cannot do our own things anymore, we are constantly in need of something to be happy, right? Not when you are really old, but say when you are about 10 plus, 12 plus. After that time, you need something to be happy. Without something, you cannot be simply happy. What happens is, when you are young, when you are a young child, out of this time, energy, and money that I mentioned, when you are a young person, you would have all the time you need in life. You will have all the energy you need in your life, but you don't have the money that you need to fulfill your happiness. So you don't have that factor. What happens when you are a young person, a youth who's working now? He would have the money, but he does not have the time to do anything, because they are busy with their achievements and their promotions, etc. So they have the energy, they have the money, but you don't have the time now. And when you're about to retire, or when you're retired, you will have the time, you will have the money, but you won't have the energy now. So in each part of our lives, we are deprived of something, unless, again, if you're really lucky. So some lucky people are there, they have the time, they have the money, and they have the energy. But most of us in our parts of life, either we didn't have the money to do that, or we didn't have the time to do that, or we did not have the energy to do that. So again, see in what category you are in. But however, some people have taken an alternative. They get out of this cycle and they make their own rules. They make time for them. They make money for them sometimes. Of course, energy, you cannot do much about it. If you do not have the energy, you do not have energy. Maybe some people, they try to look younger by doing all these cosmetic surgeries and take a few pills to be more energetic. You can do that, but then there's always a limitation to that. You're always lacking something unless you go on the same race that you were going on. But some people get out of that race and they try to find happiness without even needing these three things. So in pursuit of happiness, you need to endure a lot of things. Natural disaster, force majeure. There are acts of God which are totally uncontrollable. Now, in pursuit of happiness, a person, let's say, he had so many travel plans. He wanted to go to Rio de Janeiro, to Sri Lanka, to India. But you could not do that because of COVID. So there are sometimes things which are beyond your control. Because of that, in pursuit of your happiness, these things come in between you. And you have your own enemies. Sometimes people don't like you, don't want you to have fun. So they don't let you, have your fun. So there are enemies who are coming in between you and your fun or happiness. And you have your own limitations, disabilities. Now, I know a lot of people who want to do a lot of things, but they cannot save food. They cannot because they have allergies. They have some sort of an allergy, and they want to do a lot of things in life, but they cannot because they have physical limitations. Forget about the physical limitations. We spoke of all these resource limitations, the time, money, and the energy. So I would also want you to, I would like to point out something, say if this is true to you. As and when you grow with your age, you will find that the amount of money not necessarily money, the amount of resources you need to incur to have happiness goes up. So with time, the amount of the cost of happiness goes up. Now what does that mean? When you're a young kid, now yesterday there was a little girl who came to the temple, and I was playing with that kid. I think she was about 4 years old or younger. We were playing with stones, and the previous week when she came, I was playing with a boat made out of an A4 paper. So when you are that young, you only need a very you don't need things with a lot of value. It can be just a stone, a pebble stone that we picked from the pot. That's it. And there was a lot of happiness around that. But when you are an adult, you cannot do that. When you are a teenager, you need your PS5, you need your Nintendo, you need your games, you need your computers, you need your gadgets. When you become even more elder, when you grow older, you need to travel, you need the money. So you do a summer job, you get into all these money-making activities. So more and more you evolve in your life chronologically, you need more and more resources. So the first issue of existence, or rather the first character of happiness, is that as and when you grow in your life, you will want to spend more and more in order to find that happiness. Now that spending or the cost is not necessarily financial, it could be energy, it could be time. So what would happen when you are old? Now when you in your younger days, you would spend money for recreational drugs, but when you are older, you will spend money on your drugs which will keep you alive. So that way you need to spend more. And then what happens next? So suppose that it is fine that you spend more and you strive on this. So you somehow run after this happiness, in pursuit of happiness. Once you achieve it, what would happen is that once you have that, like in the good old Maslow's Pyramid of hierarchy, you do not want to stay there. Now let's say a kid got a PS5, or as a young adult you got something, you would want to move away from that. It does not give the same satisfaction anymore. Usually a lot of things in life has a diminishing return of satisfaction. What it means is that it's very satisfying to have it interact with this 4 Ps in the beginning, but over time it fades away. It's true to people, it's true to a new house, it's true to a new laptop or a phone or a car or any materialistic possession. It's the same for any pastime. You joined a yoga class, you are very enthusiastic, but as time goes, you are not so interested. You don't have time for that anymore. You would see that you are not so interested about it. One exception would be your kids. If you have kids, you would find that we love them forever. It keeps us happy all the time. But most of other things in life, the 4 Ps, the people, possessions, places and pastimes, they have diminishing returns after some time. And you will also see, once you have it, the grass is always green on the other side. We are not content with what we have, but we always look at the other side. It's always happier on the other side. So now let's say that you somehow found what you need, spending, your increasing cost. The next thing which would happen is that it would start fading away after some time. And it's almost like this bell curve. If you have seen the ISETS course on your academic thing, or the COVID, all these natural phenomena, they follow this bell curve shape. There's a beginning, there's a peak, and then there's an end. It's true to anything. Take the temperature of the sun, the temperature of the winter. It starts, it peaks, and then it goes down. Anything in this life has more or less follows this cycle. So similarly, happiness also follows this cycle. There's a increasing happiness, there's a peak, and then it starts giving diminishing returns. The happiness goes away. You will find that you are replacing one happiness over another happiness. So as you move on time, you would move from one pastime to another pastime, one person to another person, one place to another place. Now, most likely that you are not living on the first house that you bought. It's probably your second or the third house. So you move from place to place, you want to upgrade, you think that this change would give you happiness. However, you see that again it increases, you're very happy, then it starts decreasing, and then you move on to the next one. We also see that sometimes certain things can stay longer, whereas certain happinesses are short-lived. Now, let's take iPhone 5 or Nokia 3310 is an old phone where people in the 90s would remember. People who used phones in the early 2000s or 90s would remember the Nokia 3310 phone. Now that stayed for longer, but then came Samsung S19, 20, 22. They are just going quickly away because things change fast. Things change super fast, and your happiness also change very fast. So within an year, you want to switch your happiness to a better upgrade, Samsung S23 maybe. So you find that this is also nature of happiness. Certain things stay for long, certain people stay for long, certain places stay for longer, certain possessions, certain pastimes stay for longer, but certain ones, they come and they go quite fast. You will also find this. Now these are some people that I have seen. Avicii was the world's most famous DJ, was one of the most famous DJ in Tomorrowland, the biggest music festival. The Anthony, who was a chef, and Bill Gates and Elon Musk. Now let's talk about these people. You will see that the first two celebrities, they decided to end their lives. I'm sure that they have their own reasons, but looking from an external perspective, that we see that they probably everything that a person could want in a lifetime. First of all, you need to get money in order to have fun. Both of them had enough money, and a lot of people strive to get that money. They strive to get that money. So thinking that it would give you liberation to travel, to buy what you want, to do whatever you want, to do that. However, there's one more important thing than money, which is fame or love. Even if you look at the Maslows Pyramid, the people loved these two characters. Avicii was loved by everyone. There was such a big following. There were so many fans. People really loved this person. So it's easy to get money, but it's not so easy to gain fame and love from people. So they had that. However, they thought, well, I have these things, but it's not good enough for me, so I want to end my life. Maybe there were other underlying causes, but at least looking from the surface, looking from as a third party, we see that this happened. However, Bill Gates, on the other hand, had the same thing. I mean, we love him because I hate him now because my Windows Word expired, so I hate him now. So I'm using Google presentation. However, a lot of people, we love him because we are using Windows. He has done a lot. He has his charity with Melinda and everyone. So he's a loud character. Elon Musk, again, brilliant person, one of the best entrepreneurs in this century, good innovator, trying to go to Mars. Now, they also have love, money, etc., but they are not trying to commit suicide like the previous two people. Now, what keep them alive, but not the other two? They decided to end. If you look at Bill Gates and Elon Musk both, they are trying to achieve something that they will not be able to fulfill in their lifetimes. Now, Bill Gates want to end poverty, or end hunger rather, in Africa, in Asia. He would want to do that. Now, that is not something that he would likely succeed in doing. But at least that simple hope keeps him alive, that he don't want to end his life because of that. Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. Maybe he would do that in his lifetime. And let's say that once he get there, he would want to go to Uranus or Pluto. He would find another destination that he would want to venture out to. So that keeps your life going. So this again is a nature of happiness. You will never be fully satisfied with your happiness. Once you have it, the grass will always look green on the other side, and you would want to go in pursuit of that happiness. So to sum up today's discussion, we were discussing what life is. So in order to look what life is, we looked at what a dead person doesn't have and the living has. So then we found that there's experience, there's experiences from the 5 senses, and there's mental activity, your feelings, your thoughts, etc. Then we also looked at why people would want to live. That was the original question. And then we looked at why people would want to die. Then we found that when you are unhappy, when you are sad, and when you're hopeless, that's a quadrant where you would want to think about it. But if you are sad, still hopeful, you would want to keep going. If you are happy and hopeful, you're perfect, you're on the good part. We also discussed another portion where you are happy, however you are not hopeful, or you have lost your hope, but you're still happy. We did not want to go there, or where that 2 dimensions cross the zero. We did not discuss what would happen there also, but we'll see what's happening there. And then we saw in order to have happiness, you need to have 5 ingredients, or we need to have ingredients to have happiness. 4 P's, like in the marketing: people, position, places, and pastimes are the ingredients of happiness. I took them for simplicity. You can categorically put anything into one of these baskets. I like listening to Zoom discussions. That's my pastime. I like owning a phone. That's my possession. Places, I like my bed. That's my place. I like my partner. That's people. I like the monks. I like the friends. That's people. So 4 P's. And then we discussed, once you find this 4 P's, or in order to find this 4 P's, you need to have resources. These resources could come as money, time, or energy. When you are young, you have all the time in the world, all the energy in the world, but you are out of money. When you are working, you have the money, you have the energy, but you are out of time. You don't even have time to go on a short holiday. When you are old enough, you would have the time, you would have the money, but you don't have the energy. So unless if you are really lucky in your life, most of us we are lacking one of these resources. So when we lack these resources, we are not so happy or content about our life. So some people, I said that they want to get out of this cycle and they go in pursuit of other things. They want to find other things. So that is sort of an self-actualization path. I have back in the day watched a movie called Eat, Pray, Love. That's sort of a journey that that lady takes, getting out of her race, and then you go on Eat, Pray, Love kind of a mission. So then we discussed somehow you get hold of this happiness amidst all these people who do not want you to have fun, amidst the force majeure activities, that acts of God which we cannot control. Even after all these resources, trying to acquire these resources, we have fun. But the moment we find that simple thing which gives us happiness, we are bored with it. It doesn't give us the same amount of satisfaction anymore. It's dwindling. So it always falls in this natural bell curve shape. In the beginning we strive and we attain that, we gain that, and then that's not good enough. We want to move to the next person, next place, next possession, or next pastime. So that happens in life. And then we also found that there are certain things which stays for long, certain things stays for short. You would want to think that your kids, they are forever. But again, just think, I'm not suggesting, maybe they are a longer curve than a phone. A phone would give you a quick diminishing return, whereas kids, they take time to give you diminishing returns. Maybe not. But of course, we find that certain things give, we can hang on to that happiness for longer compared to certain things which is only for a shorter period of time. And then we discussed, looking at people, how some people want to postpone their death or would not want to hang on to their life by being hopeful, by adopting something that you would not be able to achieve in your lifetime. And if you adopt something like that, even enlightenment, if you adopt something like enlightenment which you won't be able to have in this life, it would keep you sort of going until your end of the time. But what is wrong with that is that at the end of your life, you will be still left with unfinished business, because you still have to get to enlightenment. So then I think it would be a little harder for you to rest in peace. So if you want to really rest in peace, might as well find it while you are living. So that is the first part of our discussion. So next week we'll be talking about more characteristics of happiness, and what is really happiness, and what causes this happiness, and what are the reasons for this happiness to be like that. Why is it has its own bell curved shape? Why is it like that? We'll be going there. So now I would like to ask you to ask me questions if you have arising from what we've been discussing today. If there's something that I could answer right away, it would be the time. And if you disagree with something, if you do not like any part of this presentation, please go ahead and ask your questions, shoot your question. We have a couple of minutes before we conclude it. So, question time.
Well, first I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time on a Saturday to be with us tonight. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
I found your grasp of happiness as we go away is very interesting. And I wonder what your observation was, that oftentimes I find that it's the desire for something that brings about that peak of happiness, but once that thing, whatever it might be, is attained, it never seems to meet what the expectation you might have. And I think as I've gotten older over time, I've tended to try and temper my expectations and sort of level out those ways as well. What your thoughts were around that?
That's a very good question. You mind, Jason, if I take time to answer that the next week? Because that's a beautiful question you asked. In fact, that's the whole thing that we are going to discuss next week. Why is it like this? So thank you for asking that question. We will cover that during the next week. So, yeah, why I said that is that when we lay out this framework, we will have a better ground to have a proper discussion. Very good question. So let's take that on the next week. Any other question? Any other question that you have? Oh, I wanted to mention one more thing. Now, I said all these things, but now I also did not answer the question for whom this discussion series is for. Now, try to figure out yourself, is this for me? Are you tired of this pursuit of happiness? Are you tired of chasing different things? And once you find it, are you tired that you have to leave that and go and look for the next best thing? And is this really a question that you want to answer, or are you here just because you are forced, or you are just inquisitive of what's happening and then just interested? Please try to find the real answer, which is your personal answer or your personal question, right? So then are you really interested about trying to figure out why it is this way? I mean, we have been living like this. Should we learn why it is like this, or should we just keep going like the way we were used to? If you are interested about finding the answers, if you really think that it's an answer that you need to really satisfy yourself from your bottom of your heart, then let's meet on the next session. So again, if you have questions, please do ask me relating to today's discussion. Regardless of that, let's have the discussion next week as well. Same time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. It will be daylight saving from next week. So let's see everyone again next week. So I would say Teruvan Saranai, which means the blessings of the triple gem. I will tell you later what a triple gem is. It's not the gem that we have on the top of Stupa, but it's a different gem. It's an anecdote actually. So I bless you, Teruvan Saranai, and may everyone find your peace and fulfillment. Take care.